You must transfer your house to your sister. My mother's voice cut through the dinner party like a knife through butter. She raised her wine glass. That practiced smile plastered across her face and made her announcement in front of everyone. 30 guests packed into the dining room of my childhood home in South Philadelphia. The declaration was cold, public, deliberately humiliating. She chose this moment, this crowd, because she knew the pressure of all those eyes would force my hand. My younger sister Mia needed a house to start her business, she explained to the captive audience. And I already had my own place in Fishtown, didn't I? So what was the problem? Why would I be so selfish as to hold on to a beach cottage I barely used when my baby sister needed it so desperately? Mia laughed from across the table, tossing her dark curls over her shoulder in that practiced gesture she'd perfected years ago. Relax, Daisy. It's just a house. The room erupted in agreement. Nervous laughter, clinking glasses, a chorus of family helps family. And she has a point, doesn't she? I sat frozen, my husband Marco's hand tightening around mine under the table. The faces around me blurred together. Cousins, family friends, people who had watched me grow up. People who knew exactly what they were doing. Because more than anyone in that room, I understood the truth. They weren't supporting family values. They were jealous of everything I'd built for myself, and they saw an opportunity to take a piece of it. My mother had always been good at orchestrating these moments, turning my successes into obligations, my boundaries into selfishness. But this time was different. This time, she'd overplayed her hand. I looked at my mother's face, triumphant and certain, and I felt something crack open inside me. Not my resolve, no, that had been building for years. What cracked was my willingness to pretend anymore. I grew up in a picture-perfect Italian-American family in South Philadelphia, just a few blocks from the Italian market where my grandmother used to take us for fresh mozzarella every Saturday. Sunday dinners with the extended family, graduation photos on every wall, a front stoop where my mother sat with the neighbors every summer evening, gossiping in a mix of English and Italian dialect. From the outside, we looked like the embodiment of family values, the kind of tight-knit clan that everyone claims to admire. But inside our walls, there was an unspoken rule. Mia came first. She'd been a sickly child, prone to respiratory infections and mysterious stomach ailments that kept my parents up at night. I was 3 years older, sturdy and healthy, the daughter who never complained. Somewhere along the way, my resilience became my punishment. Because I didn't need extra attention, I wasn't supposed to want it. When we were kids, Mia got the bigger bedroom because she needed the space for her nebulizer and medications. When I turned 13 and asked to redecorate my tiny room, my mother said we didn't have the budget. That same year, they renovated Mia's bathroom with new tiles and a rainfall shower head because the steam helped her breathing. The pattern continued. Mia got a car for her 16th birthday, a used Honda Civic, but still. I got a card with $50 in it when I turned 16, and my father's old bicycle to get myself to my part-time job at the pharmacy. I told myself it made sense. She was fragile. I was strong. I could handle it. When I went to Temple University, my parents made it clear. They'd help with tuition, but living expenses were my responsibility. I worked 25 hours a week at a campus bookstore, took out loans, and sent money home every month to help with Mia's medical bills. When I graduated and got my first real job as a marketing coordinator, that monthly contribution was just expected to continue. I never complained. That was my role. The eldest daughter who had it together, who didn't need anything, who could shoulder the weight of family obligation without breaking. My mother called it maturity. My father called it being a good daughter. I called it survival. And because I made it look easy, they never once thanked me. My sacrifices became invisible, simply the way things were supposed to be. Mia's needs were crises requiring immediate action. Mine were inconveniences that could wait. They could always wait. The dinner party wasn't spontaneous. Looking back, with the clarity that comes from betrayal and distance, I can see every calculated detail, every carefully orchestrated moment designed to back me into a corner. My mother had insisted on hosting a celebration of family, she'd called it when she invited us 3 weeks earlier. Marco and I had been married for 2 years, and she wanted to properly honor our anniversary with everyone who matters. I should have known better. My mother never did anything without multiple agendas, layers of manipulation wrapped in gestures that looked like love. The guest list was carefully curated, my parents' closest friends, neighbors from the block, relatives who'd known me since I was in diapers, and Marco's cousin Tony, who'd brought his loudmouth wife Gina. People who'd been fed years of narrative about what a good sister I should be. People who could be counted on to apply pressure. Throughout the evening, my mother kept steering conversations toward family, sacrifice, helping each other climb. She told stories about her own mother helping her aunts through hard times, about how real Italians took care of their own. The subtext was clear to everyone. Look at our beautiful, successful Daisy with her fancy marketing job and her lawyer husband. Surely she can spare something for her baby sister. When dessert was served, my mother's famous tiramisu, she stood up. I remember the way she smoothed her black dress, the way she waited for silence with that patient smile she'd perfected at church socials. I want to make a toast, she began, and the room quieted. To family, to the bonds that tie us together, stronger than anything else in this world. Glasses raised. People murmured agreement. Then she turned to me and her smile sharpened. Which is why I know my darling Daisy will do the right thing. She paused, letting the anticipation build. You must transfer your house to your sister. The words landed like a bomb. I felt Marco stiffen beside me, heard his sharp intake of breath. Around the table, faces turned toward me with expressions ranging from surprise to approval to barely concealed glee. My mother continued as if she'd just asked me to pass the salt. Mia needs a space to launch her catering business, and you already have this beautiful home in Fishtown. The cottage in Cape May would be perfect for her. Right on the water, great for events. It makes perfect sense. Mia, who'd been unusually quiet all evening, suddenly came alive. She laughed, light and dismissive. Come on, sis. Relax. It's just a house. That's when the room exploded. Suddenly, everyone had an opinion. She's got a point, Daisy. Family's gotta help family. You've always been so generous. Think of what a difference it would make for Mia. The pressure was physical, suffocating. I looked around at these people I'd known my entire life, and I saw clearly what my mother had orchestrated. This wasn't a request. It was a public ambush designed to make refusal impossible. But as I sat there, my mother's triumphant face burned into my vision. Something inside me went very, very quiet. And in that quiet, I found my answer. The Cape May cottage wasn't just a house. It was my first true sanctuary. The first place in my entire life where I could breathe without worrying about who needed something from me. When Marco and I got engaged, his parents, Frank and Teresa Giordano, pulled us aside after the celebration dinner at Carmine's in Center City. Frank, a retired contractor with calloused hands and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, gave Marco an envelope. Inside were the deed and keys to a small beach cottage in Cape May, New Jersey. "We bought this 30 years ago," Teresa explained, her eyes shining. "Raised Marco and his brother spending summers there. Now we want you two to have it. Start your marriage with a place that's just yours." I'd cried. Not delicate tears, but huge, gulping sobs that embarrassed me until Teresa wrapped me in her arms and whispered, "A daughter-in-law is a daughter, Kara. This is your home now." The cottage itself was modest. A two-bedroom bungalow painted pale yellow, with a screened-in porch and a small garden where beach roses grew wild. It was 3 blocks from the ocean, close enough to hear the waves at night. The interior needed updating. The kitchen cabinets were from the 1980s, and the bathroom tile was an unfortunate shade of seafoam green. But it was mine, not something I'd had to earn through sacrifice, not something granted on condition of good behavior, not a hand-me-down from Mia after she'd gotten tired of it. It was given with love, with no strings attached, with genuine desire for my happiness. Marco and I spent weekends there, slowly renovating. We painted the walls ourselves, soft blues and whites that made you feel like you were inside a seashell. We ripped up the old carpet and refinished the hardwood floors beneath. We planted tomatoes and basil in the garden, and on summer evenings, we'd make fresh pasta and eat dinner on the porch while watching the sun set. The cottage represented something I'd never had before: boundaries. It was the first space in my life that my family couldn't just walk into, couldn't claim a piece of, couldn't make demands about. When I was there, I could breathe. I could be just Daisy, not Daisy the eldest daughter, or Daisy who has to be strong, or Daisy who owes everyone something. And that's exactly why my mother couldn't stand it. She'd been to the cottage exactly once, the first summer after we got it. She'd walked through, lips pursed, commenting on everything that needed fixing. "It's very small," she'd said, "and so far from everything. What do you even do out here?" When I tried to explain how peaceful it was, she'd waved her hand dismissively. "Peace? You sound like one of those therapy people." She never came back, but she asked about it constantly. Who had the deed? Was it in both our names? What had the Giordanos said about inheritance? The questions felt invasive, but I'd answered them, not realizing I was handing her the ammunition she'd eventually use against me. The cottage was proof that I could have something beautiful that didn't come through her. And for a woman who'd built her identity around controlling her children, that was unforgivable. The warnings were there. I just didn't want to see them. It started about 2 months before the dinner party. My mother began calling more frequently, always with casual questions about the cottage. Had we finished the renovations? Were we using it much? Such a shame for a property to sit empty most of the year. Did the Giordanos ever mention wanting it back? I thought she was just making conversation. Now I recognize it for what it was: reconnaissance. Then Mia suddenly became interested in my life. She'd never asked about my work before, but now she wanted to know everything about my marketing campaigns, my salary, my benefits package. She started showing up at my house in Fishtown unannounced, always with some excuse. She was in the neighborhood. She'd made too much sauce and wanted to share. She needed advice about a recipe. During one of these visits, she walked through every room, touching things, opening closets. "You've done so well for yourself," she kept saying, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. so much space, so many nice things. At the time, I felt guilty. Had I been flaunting my success? Should I have been more humble about the life Marco and I had built? 3 weeks before the party, Mia announced on Facebook that she was starting a catering business. The post was carefully crafted, photos of her cooking, testimonials from friends, and a heartfelt paragraph about following her dreams despite not having the advantages some people are born with. The comments section filled with supportive messages, many from people who'd be at that dinner party. My mother shared the post, adding, "So proud of my baby girl for having the courage to chase her dreams. Some people are natural entrepreneurs." The implication hung there, unlike her sister, who'd taken the safe corporate route. A week before the party, my father called. It was unusual. He rarely called me directly, always deferring to my mother for family communications. He spoke carefully, like he was reading from a script. "Your mother thinks maybe you could help Mia get started, with the business. She'll need a space for events, storage, that kind of thing." "What kind of help?" I asked. Long pause. "Well, you've got that place at the shore, just sitting there most of the time." My stomach dropped. "Dad, that's my house." I know, just think about it, okay? Family's important. Your mother really wants this to work out." He hung up before I could respond. I told Marco about the conversation that night. He was immediately suspicious. "They're planning something," he said. "Don't go to that party." But I went anyway. Because despite everything, despite the years of being overlooked and taken for granted, some part of me still believed my mother wouldn't actually ambush me in front of 30 people. I was wrong. The revelation came during aperitivo, that sacred Italian tradition of pre-dinner drinks and appetizers, before my mother made her grand announcement. She'd been fluttering around the party, playing the perfect hostess in her elegant black dress and pearl necklace, when she set her phone down carelessly on the side table next to me to help Aunt Carmela with her coat. The screen was still on, glowing in the dim lighting, showing her messages app. I wasn't trying to snoop. I wouldn't have even looked, but the text preview was just there, impossible to miss, practically screaming at me from the screen. Mia. Is tonight the night? Mom. Yes, I've set it up perfectly. She won't be able to refuse in front of everyone. My heart started pounding. I glanced around. My mother was still occupied, laughing with Aunt Carmela by the door. Almost without thinking, I picked up her phone. The chat was labeled Operation Cottage with a house emoji. Just my mother and Mia. I scrolled up, my hands shaking. Mom, 2 weeks ago. I'll invite everyone who can apply pressure. The Russos, the DeLucas, Tony and Gina. People who know how family is supposed to work. Mia. What if she says no? Mom. She won't. Not publicly. Daisy's always been terrified of looking selfish. That's her weakness. Mia. Should I practice crying? Like emotional vulnerability? Mom. No. Be casual. Dismissive, even. Act like it's no big deal, just a house. That'll make her look dramatic if she refuses. Mia. Genius. Mom. I've been working on your father. He'll stay quiet. He always does. Further down, Mom. Make sure you mention the catering business in every conversation this week. Post about it constantly. We need public sympathy on your side. Mia. Done. Already got 200 likes on my announcement post. Mom. Perfect. By the time we make our move, everyone will see Daisy as the successful one who can afford to help her struggling sister. Mia, what if her in-laws get involved? Mom, they won't dare make a scene. And if they do, we'll paint them as the rich snobs who look down on our family. Either way, we win. The most recent messages from earlier that day. Mia, I'm nervous. What if this backfires? Mom, it won't. Trust me. I've been managing Daisy her entire life. She's predictable. She'll feel guilty, embarrassed, and obligated, in that order. Then she'll cave. Mia, you really think so? Mom, sweetie, I've been training that girl to sacrifice for you since she was 3 years old. This is just one more thing she'll give up to keep the peace. That's who she is. I read that last message 3 times, each word sinking in like stones in water. That's who she is. Past tense. As if I was already decided, already predictable, already defeated. I heard my mother's footsteps approaching. Carefully, I set the phone back exactly where she'd left it. Screen now dark. She swept past me, touching my shoulder briefly. Having fun, honey? And continued toward the kitchen. My face must have looked normal. I don't know how. Inside, I was burning. After my mother's announcement, after the room erupted in agreement, I sat perfectly still. Marco leaned close, whispering urgently, "We're leaving. Now." But I shook my head. "No, I'm handling this." I stood slowly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. The sound cut through the chatter. Conversations died. All eyes turned to me. "I appreciate the suggestion, Mom," I said, my voice steady and clear. "But I'm afraid that's not possible." My mother's smile faltered, just slightly. "Daisy, don't be dramatic. We can discuss the details later, but—" "There are no details to discuss." I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder. I'd brought our important documents, just in case. Marco had insisted. The cottage can't be transferred to anyone outside the immediate family. The room went silent. I opened the folder, removing the deed and the gift documentation Frank Giordano had prepared with his lawyer. When Marco's parents gave us the property, they included specific legal terms. The cottage is held in an irrevocable family trust. Marco and I are the beneficiaries, with the property reverting to the Giordano family trust if we divorce, or if we try to transfer it to any third party. I looked directly at my mother. Third party includes siblings. "That's ridiculous," my mother said, but her voice had lost its confidence. "No one makes those kinds of restrictions on a gift." "Frank Giordano does," I replied. "He's a contractor who spent 40 years dealing with family property disputes. He learned to protect his assets." I held up the document so everyone could see the official legal seal. "Any attempt to transfer, sell, or allow extended occupancy by non-family members results in immediate forfeiture. The property would return to Frank and Teresa." Marco stood beside me, his hand on my lower back. My parents made their intentions clear. This house is for their son and daughter-in-law. No one else. Mia's face had gone pale. "But I just need to use it, not own it, just for events and—" "Section 4B, I continued, flipping to the relevant page. "No commercial use permitted, no business operations, no rental income. The property is designated exclusively for personal family residence." I looked at Mia. "Your catering business would violate the terms." The room had completely shifted. I watched the realization dawn on faces around the table. They'd been called here to pressure me into something that was legally impossible. My mother had humiliated herself. Aunt Carmela cleared her throat. Well, Ava, if the deed says... The deed is just paper, my mother snapped, her composure cracking. This is about family, about doing what's right. What's right, I said softly, is respecting legally binding contracts. What's right is not ambushing someone at a party to steal their property. The word hung in the air. Steal. My mother's face flushed crimson. Mia looked like she might cry. Real tears this time. Not the performance she'd planned. But I wasn't finished. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone, since we're all family here, and since Mom loves having important conversations in front of everyone, I think we should all see something. My mother's eyes widened. Daisy, what are you... I opened the screenshots I'd taken of her chat with Mia. My hands were steady now, the fear and guilt I'd carried my whole life burning away like morning fog. These are text messages between Mom and Mia, from a group chat they call Operation Cottage. I began reading aloud. I've set it up perfectly. She won't be able to refuse in front of everyone. The color drained from my mother's face. I continued reading, my voice clear and emotionless. Daisy's always been terrified of looking selfish. That's her weakness. I looked up. That was Mom, by the way, explaining to Mia how to manipulate me. Give me that phone, my mother hissed, but she didn't move. Too many witnesses. I kept reading. Should I practice crying? Like emotional vulnerability? That's Mia. Mom's response. No. Be casual. Dismissive, even. Act like it's no big deal, just a house. That'll make her look dramatic if she refuses. Mia had started crying for real now, but no one was comforting her. They were all staring. Frozen. Here's a good one, I said. I've been managing Daisy her entire life. She's predictable. She'll feel guilty, embarrassed, and obligated, in that order. Then she'll cave. Aunt Carmela gasped. Tony's wife Gina whispered something to her husband. The neighbors exchanged shocked glances. But I saved the best for last. I've been training that girl to sacrifice for you since she was 3 years old. This is just one more thing she'll give up to keep the peace. That's who she is. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Then Frank Giordano stood up. Marco's father, who'd been sitting quietly at the far end of the table, rose to his full height. His voice was cold, controlled fury. Ava, I've known you for 30 years. Watched you at church, at community events, heard you talk about family values. He looked at her with contempt. This is the most disgusting display of manipulation I've ever witnessed. Teresa stood beside him. We gave that property to our daughter-in-law because we love her, because she deserves a place where she feels safe. Her voice cracked. And you tried to steal it using public humiliation as your weapon. My mother finally found her voice. You don't understand. Daisy has always had everything handed to her. Mia needs to grow up, Aunt Carmela interrupted, her voice sharp. And you need to be ashamed of yourself. One by one, guests started standing, gathering their coats, making excuses. The party was disintegrating. My mother stood in the center of the room, her perfect dinner party collapsing around her, her manipulation exposed to everyone who mattered, and I felt nothing but relief. Marco and I left without saying goodbye. We drove to the cottage that night, leaving our house in Fishtown dark and empty. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from my mother and 23 text messages. I deleted them all without reading. Then I blocked her number. Mia tried calling from different phones. Her own, our father's, Unknown numbers that I suspected were her friends. I blocked them all. My mother showed up at our Fishtown house 3 days later. I know because our neighbor Jen texted me. Your mom's on your porch. Looks upset. Want me to call the cops? I told her to let my mother sit there. After 2 hours, she left. At Marco's insistence, I consulted with a family lawyer. I brought the screenshots, the deed, everything. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Rita Romano who'd grown up in the neighborhood, looked over everything and said, "They've got no legal leg to stand on, but document everything anyway. People who manipulate like this don't stop easily." So I documented every call attempt, every message that came through before I blocked the number, every time my mother showed up uninvited. I compiled a file labeled Evidence of Harassment and gave copies to Rita, to Marco's parents, and kept one in our safe. I changed the locks on both houses. Marco installed a Ring doorbell at the Fishtown property so we'd know if anyone came by. We informed the Cape May neighbors that if they saw anyone matching my mother's or sister's description, we'd appreciate a call. My father sent one email. It was short. "Daisy, your mother is very upset. Can't we work this out like a family? She means well. Mia is struggling. Please reconsider." I wrote back, "Dad, I have considered. For 32 years. I'm done considering. If you want a relationship with me, it will be on my terms, with clear boundaries. If you prefer to enable mom's behavior, that's your choice. But I'm not participating anymore." He never responded. The hardest part wasn't cutting off my mother or Mia. It was accepting that my father chose them over me. That when forced to take a stand, he picked the path of least resistance, just like he always had. Some relatives reached out, Aunt Carmela, Marco's cousin Tony, a few others. They offered support, apologized for not speaking up sooner, asked if I was okay. Those relationships I kept. The ones who stayed silent, who sided with my mother, who suggested I was overreacting. I let them go. I grieved. Not for what I'd lost, but for what I'd never really had. A mother who saw me as a person, not a resource. A sister who wanted me in her life, not just my assets. A father with a backbone. But grief, I learned, can coexist with relief. I was sad about the family I'd lost. I was also lighter than I'd been in decades. For the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying anyone's expectations but my own. 6 months after the dinner party that changed everything, I painted the cottage. The pale yellow had been charming in its own way, sweet and nostalgic. But I wanted something fresh, something that represented a new chapter. I chose a soft sage green that made the house look like it had grown out of the beach roses naturally, like it belonged to the landscape in a way it never had before. Marco and I expanded the garden, adding a stone path and a small patio where we could have breakfast overlooking the flowers. We bought new furniture for the porch, comfortable Adirondack chairs where we could sit and read, or just listen to the ocean and the calls of seabirds wheeling overhead. Every improvement felt like a statement. This is ours. This is permanent. This is protected. I stopped sending money to my family. That extra $800 a month went into an account we labeled Future. We haven't decided what that future looks like yet. Maybe kids, maybe travel, maybe just security and peace of mind. But it's ours to decide, ours to dream about, ours to build. My career flourished without the constant drain of family drama. I got promoted to senior marketing director. Without the guilt and obligation hanging over me, I could focus, take risks, advocate for myself. Turns out, when you're not conditioned to make yourself smaller, you can grow. People ask me sometimes if I feel guilty, if I regret cutting off my family, if I think I overreacted. The answer is simple: no. Because I've learned something crucial. Family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by respect, by boundaries, by genuine care. The Giordanos showed me that. Frank and Teresa treat me like a daughter. They ask about my life, celebrate my successes, support my decisions. They never make me earn their love through sacrifice. Cutting off my mother didn't destroy my family. It revealed who my real family had been all along. And the cottage itself? It didn't change me. I'd like to think I was always capable of standing up for myself, of drawing boundaries, of refusing to be manipulated. But saying no changed everything. That single word, spoken in front of 30 witnesses, broke a pattern that had been set when I was 3 years old. It announced that I was no longer predictable, no longer manageable, no longer willing to shrink myself to make others comfortable. There's power in no, not aggressive, angry power, quiet, certain power, the power of knowing your worth, protecting your peace, and refusing to negotiate on your non negotiables. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd given in that night. If I'd convinced myself it was just a house and signed it over to keep the peace. I know exactly what would have happened. It wouldn't have been enough. There would have been another request, another public ambush, another piece of myself I'd be expected to sacrifice. Because people who see you as a resource will never be satisfied. They'll keep taking until you have nothing left to give. The cottage sits peacefully on its small lot, 3 blocks from the Atlantic Ocean. Marco and I spent last weekend pulling weeds and planning where to plant hydrangeas in the spring. We listened to old Italian music on the porch and made fresh pasta for dinner. And for the first time in my entire life, I felt completely at home. Not because of the house itself, but because I'd finally chosen myself. That was the real gift worth protecting.